Alright, so here's my story. I'm writing this because life hit me hard in ways I never saw coming, and I think maybe someone out there can learn from my mistakes, or at least not feel as alone if they're going through something similar. I used to think life was a straight line. You go to school, you get a job, maybe marry someone who loves you back, work hard, and someday retire with a little bit of peace. That's the version I had in my head. Neat, simple, predictable. But life isn't neat. It's not even close. It's messy, unpredictable, and sometimes it feels like a bad movie where the plot twists just keep coming at you. For me, the turning point started with what seemed like a good thing. I got a promotion at work. I was finally making more money, finally in a position of responsibility. But along with it came endless hours, stress, and the creeping realization that I was trading my time, the one thing I'll never get back, for a title and some extra cash. I ignored the warning signs because, honestly, I thought that's what being a man meant. Work hard, provide, shut up, and deal with it. But while I was busy proving myself at work, life was happening behind my back. And the betrayal that came from it, it changed everything I thought I knew about myself and the people closest to me. I'll get to that in the next part, but here's the truth I had to swallow first. Life is short. And if you're not careful, you can waste it living someone else's version of success instead of your own. The first crack in the picture-perfect life came at home. I'd been married for almost 5 years. We weren't a fireworks couple, but we had a rhythm. Coffee in the morning, dinner together when my schedule allowed, weekend grocery runs. It felt steady, safe. But then I started noticing little things. Her phone face down on the table. A sudden interest in late-night yoga classes. A laugh she gave to her texts that I hadn't heard directed at me in months. At first, I brushed it off. I told myself I was just paranoid, tired, overworked. I mean, I was the one buried in office deadlines. Maybe she was just finding her own way to cope. Then one night, I came home early. That decision, leaving the office 2 hours ahead of schedule, changed my life. I opened the door, and the apartment was too quiet. The kind of quiet that screams. Her bag was by the couch, but she wasn't there. I walked down the hallway, and before I even touched the bedroom door, I heard it. A man's voice. My heart dropped straight to the floor. It was like gravity had doubled. My chest felt hollow, my ears were burning, but at the same time, my body was ice. I didn't even open the door. I just stood there, frozen, listening to the life I thought I had shatter into pieces. And in that moment, 1,000 thoughts hit me all at once. Rage, shame, denial. Weirdly, I even thought about work emails I hadn't answered yet. Like my brain was desperate to cling to something normal while the ground under me was gone. I didn't walk in. I didn't scream. I just left, quietly. And that decision, to stay silent in that moment, would haunt me in ways I never expected. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat in my car in a parking lot, staring at the steering wheel, trying to convince myself it hadn't happened. My hands were shaking the whole time. I must have looked insane. Just this guy in a suit, sitting under a dim streetlight, gripping the wheel like it was the only thing keeping me alive. By morning, I had convinced myself I needed proof. It wasn't enough to hear it. My brain wanted hard evidence, something to confirm that I wasn't losing my mind. So I went home like nothing happened. I smiled, kissed her on the forehead, and pretended. That fake smile was the heaviest thing I'd ever worn. Over the next week, I became a detective in my own house. Checking her phone when she showered, watching her eyes when she texted, asking casual questions I already knew the answers to. It felt disgusting, like I was betraying myself just by needing confirmation. And then I found it. A message, buried in her notifications. Not just flirty texts, full conversations. Plans, jokes, memories I wasn't part of. She called him her escape. That word cut deeper than anything else. Escape. Like I was the prison. When I confronted her, I didn't even yell. I thought I would. I thought I'd explode. But instead, I just asked one question. Why? She couldn't answer. She cried. She reached for me. But all I heard in my head was that one word. Escape. That night, I packed a bag and left. Not because I wanted to, but because staying felt like slowly bleeding out in a room full of people who couldn't see. And here's where life threw another twist. Leaving her wasn't the end of my pain. It was just the start. Walking out of that apartment, I thought the worst part was over. I told myself, okay, the marriage is done. It's painful, but at least the truth is out. Now you can rebuild. I was so wrong. Because when you lose someone you've built your daily life around, the emptiness follows you everywhere. I'd go to the grocery store and reach for 2 cartons of milk out of habit. I'd start cooking dinner and realize halfway through that I was making enough for 2. Even brushing my teeth felt weird, like I was rehearsing for a role that didn't exist anymore. And work? Work became my crutch. I buried myself in meetings, projects, deadlines, anything to distract me. At first, it helped. Everyone at the office thought I was just motivated, but really, I was just running from silence. Then came the betrayal I never saw coming. My boss, the same guy who promoted me and told me I was going places, pulled me into his office one morning. He didn't look me in the eye. He cleared his throat, shuffled papers, and then dropped the bomb. The company is restructuring. Your position won't exist anymore. I just sat there numb. Divorce papers in one hand, unemployment papers in the other. Within 2 weeks, I'd lost the 2 things I thought defined me, my marriage and my job. That's when the anger really hit. Not just at my wife or my boss, but at myself. For wasting years chasing the wrong things. For believing stability was real. For not living life on my own terms while I had the chance. And yet, somewhere inside that anger, a tiny voice whispered, this could be the start of something. The day after losing my job, I woke up at noon. No alarm, no meetings, no wife beside me, just silence. I sat on the edge of the bed staring at the wall, thinking, so this is it? This is what's left of me. For a while, I did nothing. Ate junk food. Scrolled endlessly. Slept at odd hours. The kind of living where you're not really alive, just existing. I hated myself for it, but I didn't know how to move. Then something weird happened. My old college buddy, Mark, called me out of nowhere. We hadn't talked in years, but he said he was in town and wanted to grab a drink. I almost said no. I didn't want anyone to see me like that, but something in me snapped. I thought, why not? It's not like I have a reputation left to protect. At the bar, he looked me over and said, man, you look like hell. And instead of getting defensive, I laughed. Hard. Maybe too hard. It felt good, like air escaping a balloon that had been ready to burst. Mark told me about his life. He'd started his own small business. Nothing glamorous, but he was free. His words stuck with me. Dude, money's important, but time, that's the real wealth. Don't trade it for people or jobs that don't give a damn about you. That night, walking home, I realized he was right. I had wasted years chasing stability that wasn't even real. Both my marriage and my career collapsed the moment I stopped being useful to them. So I made my first real decision. I wasn't going to crawl back into another soul-sucking job just to feel safe. I was going to figure out what freedom looked like, even if it scared me. And trust me, it did. The first risky step came quicker than I thought. A week later, I got an email from an old colleague about a short-term contract gig, freelance work. Less money, no benefits, no promises. Normally, I'd have laughed it off. But this time, something in me said, do it. What do you have to lose? So I took it. It felt strange at first, working on my own schedule. No boss breathing down my neck, no office politics. Just me, my laptop, and a deadline. I finished the project in half the time they gave me, and for the first time in months, I felt useful. Not to a company, not to a title, but to myself. Still, fear was always in the background. What if no other jobs came in? What if I failed? What if I ended up broke and crawling back to some corporate cubicle? That voice in my head wouldn't shut up. But then, out of nowhere, another twist. My wife's escape. The guy she cheated with reached out to me. Yeah, can you believe that? He sent me a message on Facebook saying he was sorry, that he didn't know the full situation, and that she had lied to him too. I don't know what kind of reaction he expected. Forgiveness? Brotherhood? All I felt was a mix of disgust and pity. For both of us, honestly. Because the truth was, neither of us had won. She was chasing happiness in someone else's arms, and he was stuck in the middle of her lies. And me? I was starting from zero. That night, I made another decision. I wasn't going to let betrayal define me anymore. If life was short, I wasn't going to spend it replaying old wounds. So I doubled down on the freelance work. I told myself, if I can survive losing my wife and my job in the same month, I can survive anything. The small wins started showing up in the strangest ways. A company I did that first freelance project for recommended me to another, then another. Suddenly, I was juggling 3 clients at once. The money wasn't amazing, but it was enough to pay rent and keep me afloat. More importantly, it was mine. Every dollar felt like proof that I could survive without begging some boss for permission. But life, of course, doesn't let you coast for long. One afternoon, while I was working at a cafe, I saw her, my ex-wife. She walked in holding hands with someone new. Not the guy she cheated with, someone else. She looked happy, radiant, even. I froze. My coffee went cold in front of me as I watched her laugh, tuck her hair behind her ear, and kiss this new guy like the world belonged to them. My chest tightened, not because I wanted her back, but because I realized how quickly I'd been replaced. For a moment, anger surged. Betrayal burned in my throat again. But then something strange happened. The anger slipped away. I just felt tired. Tired of carrying her ghost around like a backpack full of rocks. So I left the cafe. I didn't say hi, didn't cause a scene. I just walked out into the street, and for the first time, I felt a small spark of freedom. She wasn't mine to lose anymore, and I wasn't hers to define. That night, I stayed up late working, blasting music in my empty apartment, eating cheap takeout. It should have felt lonely, but it didn't. It felt like a beginning. And that's when another unexpected turn came my way, an email that would change everything. The email came around midnight. Subject line, Opportunity Abroad. At first, I thought it was spam. But when I opened it, my jaw actually dropped. One of my freelance clients had forwarded my work to a partner company overseas. They were impressed and wanted to know if I'd be interested in a 6-month contract in Spain. I stared at the screen for a long time. 6 months in another country? Me, the guy who had spent years chained to a desk, suddenly getting the chance to live and work on another continent? It sounded insane. Impossible. Terrifying. But also alive. The next morning, I told Mark about it. He nearly shouted through the phone. Dude, this is it. This is the sign. You've got nothing tying you down anymore. Go. He was right. My marriage was over. My career was already dead. I had no mortgage, no kids, no obligations. If there was ever a time to take a leap, it was now. Still, fear gripped me. What if I failed? What if I blew all my savings and came crawling back even more broken than before? My inner critic was loud, but there was a louder voice underneath it whispering, life is short. Don't waste it being afraid. So I wrote back. I said yes. That one email, that one decision, shifted the ground beneath me. And as the plane ticket confirmation hit my inbox, I realized I wasn't running from betrayal anymore. I was running toward something. Landing in Spain felt like being dropped into another life. The air was warmer, the people louder, the pace slower. Everything was different. The language, the food, even the way the sunlight hit the streets. At first, I was terrified. Ordering coffee was an ordeal. I butchered simple Spanish phrases, got lost in winding alleys, and even once ended up on the wrong train going 2 hours in the opposite direction. Back home, I would have been humiliated. Here, though, I had nothing to lose. I laughed it off, learned, and kept going. Work was tough, but freeing. Instead of endless corporate meetings, I was sitting in cafes with my laptop, collaborating with people halfway across the world. Deadlines still existed, but the stress didn't weigh on me the same way. It felt lighter. And then came an unexpected twist. One of my new coworkers, a local woman named Clara, invited me to join her group of friends for dinner. Normally, I would have said no. Socializing after everything I'd been through sounded exhausting. But something in me said, say yes. Stop hiding. That night, surrounded by strangers laughing in a language I barely understood, something inside me shifted. I wasn't the betrayed husband or the laid-off employee anymore. I was just me, a man rebuilding, one unfamiliar word and one new experience at a time. And sitting there, sipping cheap wine in a noisy Spanish bar, I realized betrayal had pushed me here, but maybe it wasn't the end of my story. Maybe it was the start of the one I was meant to live. Just when I thought things were finally smoothing out, life threw another curveball. 2 months into Spain, I got sick. Nothing dramatic at first, just fatigue, headaches, a cough that wouldn't quit. I brushed it off as stress or maybe the adjustment to a new country. But one night, I collapsed in my tiny rented flat, waking up hours later on the floor with my phone buzzing beside me. The hospital visit was a blur of tests and broken Spanish. Turns out I had pneumonia, and the doctor told me point blank, "You need to slow down, or this could get worse." Lying in that hospital bed, I felt small again. Weak. My mind spiraled. What if I die here? Alone, in a country where I can barely communicate? The betrayal, the job loss, even the adventure, it all flashed before me, and for the first time, I realized how fragile I really was. But here's the part that surprised me. Clara, the coworker who had invited me out, showed up. She brought soup, translated for the nurses, even stayed late just to make sure I wasn't alone. She didn't know me anything, yet she was there. That simple act of kindness cracked something open in me. I'd spent so long seeing people as sources of pain or betrayal that I'd forgotten some are just good. When I got discharged, weaker but grateful, I promised myself something. I wouldn't waste this second chance. If life wanted to remind me it could end any time, fine. But I'd meet it head-on, wisely and fully. Recovery was slow, but it became my first real lesson in living wisely. I realized I had spent years sprinting through life, measuring success in money, titles, and approval, none of which mattered when I was lying in a hospital bed, gasping for air. I started small. Morning runs along the cobblestone streets. Simple meals I cooked myself. Journaling at night about what I was grateful for instead of what I had lost. Every step felt like reclaiming a part of myself that betrayal and failure had buried. Work continued, but I set boundaries this time. No late-night projects that drained me. No sacrificing sleep or meals for someone else's deadlines. I learned that being productive wasn't the same as being alive. And Clara, she became more than a coworker. Not romantically at first, just someone who reminded me that humans could be kind, that connection could heal. She pushed me gently to speak more Spanish, explore new neighborhoods, even try tapas I would have avoided before. Life became a series of small experiments. Can I laugh in another language? Can I cook a meal for someone else? Can I survive an unexpected pneumonia attack in a foreign country? Every tiny victory reminded me, life is short, but you can make it meaningful if you choose to. And slowly, the anger and betrayal that had dominated my life started to feel like fuel rather than a cage. Just when I thought I was finally finding my rhythm, work threw me another curveball. One of my biggest clients, the company that had brought me overseas, hit me with a major last-minute project. Tight deadline, complicated requirements, and zero room for error. At first, panic bubbled up. My old self, the one who used to crumble under pressure, wanted to quit, hide, or complain. But then I remembered the lessons of the past months. Breathe, prioritize, take small steps. I organized a plan, broke the project into manageable pieces, and tackled it day by day. The unexpected part? I started enjoying it. The challenge, the creative problem-solving, the pressure, it wasn't draining me. It made me feel alive again. And when I submitted the finished project ahead of schedule, the client's praise felt different this time. Not like validation I needed to survive, but recognition of the effort I chose to put in. It hit me hard. Betrayal and loss had taught me something valuable. I'd learned resilience, self-reliance, and the courage to step into the unknown. I was no longer defined by what others had taken from me. I was defined by what I chose to build with my own hands. That evening, sitting on my balcony overlooking the city lights, I realized life wasn't about avoiding pain or betrayal. It was about navigating it wisely, embracing risk, and finding moments of joy wherever you could. I started thinking a lot about betrayal. The kind that feels like it will crush you. My ex-wife, my old boss, even the world that seemed to turn against me. At first, I hated them. I wanted revenge, justice, acknowledgement. But here's the thing I realized sitting on that balcony in Spain. Holding on to that hate only keeps you chained to the past. I couldn't change what happened. I couldn't undo the lies, the infidelity, or the layoffs. What I could control was how I responded. Could I let it define the rest of my life? Or could I use it as fuel to live smarter, fuller, braver? So I made a choice. I chose acceptance. Not the weak kind, but the active kind. The kind that lets you say, this happened. It hurt, but I'm still here. I'm going to make the rest of my life matter. And in doing so, I started noticing things I had missed before. A neighbor who always smiled. A cafe owner who remembered my order. The way the Spanish sun painted the streets in gold in the late afternoon. Life is in these little details, the moments you'd never appreciate if you were too busy being angry or sad. I began to write down everything I wanted to do, see, and learn before I got old. Every day became an opportunity to live fully, to try new words in Spanish, to taste new foods, to meet new people, to laugh until my stomach hurt. Betrayal had hurt me, yes, but it also freed me. And that's a lesson I think a lot of people forget. Some. By now, I was starting to feel like I really belonged in this new life. But the biggest test came from within. One day, Clara invited me to join a hiking trip in the mountains outside the city. I hesitated. Heights freak me out, and I hadn't done anything adventurous in years. My old self would have said no, but something inside me said yes. And that decision changed everything. The hike was brutal at first. My legs burned, my lungs screamed, and every step felt like a reminder of all the times I'd held myself back. But halfway up, I paused, looked around, and felt something I hadn't in a long time. Awe. The valley below, the way the sun glinted off the river, the wind brushing my face. It was like life itself was showing me what I'd been missing. At the summit, Clara cheered and threw her hands up. I laughed, heart pounding, chest wide open. And in that moment, I realized I could survive heartbreak, failure, illness, betrayal, anything. And more than that, I could thrive. Life isn't about playing it safe. It's about pushing past fear, embracing risk, and savoring every fleeting, beautiful moment. That hike, that leap into the unknown, became my metaphor for everything. English, work, relationships, even life itself. You stumble, you struggle, you feel small, and then suddenly, you're standing on top of the world, and nothing can take that away. Looking back now, it's wild how quickly life can turn upside down. Betrayal, job loss, illness. It felt like the world had stacked everything against me. But here's the truth I've learned. Life is short, and the only way to live it fully is to take control of how you respond to the chaos. I rebuilt myself piece by piece, learning Spanish, traveling, working on projects that mattered to me, laughing with people who reminded me kindness exists. I learned that pain is temporary if you don't let it define you, and that betrayal doesn't have to break you. It can push you towards something greater. My advice: don't wait. Don't cling to comfort or fear. If something scares you, do it anyway. Speak the language you've been avoiding. Take the trip you've been dreaming of. Try the thing that makes your heart race. Learn, explore, fail, rise again. Life won't wait. And every moment wasted fearing the unknown is a moment you'll never get back. And most importantly, forgive, not for them, but for yourself. Free yourself from carrying the weight of other people's choices. Life is too short to live in anger or regret. Use the pain as fuel, the mistakes as lessons, and the freedom to create a life you actually want. Because in the end, the world doesn't hand you happiness. It gives you moments, choices, and chances. Grab them, embrace them, and make the most of every single one. Fire life is short. Live wisely. Live fully. Fire.